This is a follow-up in regards to the other video I had on the Spark Lite. I want to show some differences in flints that you can use with the Spark Lite system. This is not an exhaustive list, mine. It's just a show and tell. I like OEM parts. I like working on my own car. Whenever I can, I go for OEM. Only because certain things are designed to work together. And that's a cautionary statement for today. There is a definite difference in the quality you will see between the Firestarter and the Spark Lite versus another. So, I may have shown this in the last video. Cotton ball, jute twine, one cotton ball, 2-foot jute twine. It's the match that I go to now. It just makes it simpler for the Spark Lite anyway. A nice bright spark on that. Probably not enough cotton in there, but damn it, I'll make it work. But do remember how bright that spark is compared to the other sparks we'll see here in just a bit. Okay, so we know that works. Jute burns fairly cool. That's actually fairly simple to do. No magic tricks involved here. Didn't have to wet my fingers. And the main reason why I use the cotton with the jute, no, I don't think you would necessarily have to use tweezers for this, but I pack in the cotton fairly tightly. It's one cotton ball, 2 feet of jute, cinched pretty much as hard as I can get it on there. If you do put too much cotton out there, this thing will drop out and you will have a fire in your hands. I have a pot underneath this just to show up. This is king of the show, nothing else matters here. So, fairly hot spark. I hit that. That's the first time that's happened. But the idea is, yeah, it's fairly simple to set the cotton on fire. And usually does not take as much effort as this, but yeah. I may, for the sake of argument, put in some sort of accelerant later on, maybe, right? I imagine if I were to put, say, Purell on this, I get a much easier burn. But that's more than enough for me to light up my cigarette, and, you know, if I had to set kindling on fire, I can definitely do it this way. Did it tonight, in fact. Didn't need to use the whole cotton ball. So, there's a Spark Lite. Now, I went to the Four Seasons website and looked up the price for the flints. Thinking to myself, okay, well, I like OEM. Let's see if we can go OEM. The price for the flints is 25 cents for one unit, and that says it comes in a set of 5. So I'm not sure if that means it's 25 cents for a flint, or it's $1.25 for 5 flints, or it's 5 flints for 25 cents. A little strange there. And would have contacted Four Seasons to find that out. In fact, I was just going to buy it regardless. Because, you know, 25 cents for an OEM flint, pricey, yeah, I'll do it. Because it's meant to do that. Shipping is $20. And I just could not believe it. Could not believe it. $20 for a flint. Now, just to put this in perspective, right? I could, and did, buy a second Spark Lite for that amount, which would give me 2 flints, another Spark Lite, and 8 Tinder Quick tabs for a little more than the cost of shipping. So, you know, you want to sell me a pack of like 50 of those guys and, you know, make a buck that way? Cool, but don't charge me $20 for shipping. Let's find a better way to do that, huh? So that having been said, What I've done is I've replaced the flint with a standard Zippo flint, actually the branded Zippo flint, for what it's worth. And we're going to take a look at something here right quick. Do you notice the difference in the flash? What's really interesting here is when you start looking at the difference on the cotton. Huh. Strange. Now, eventually, I can get this to go, but you'll notice some of the problems I'm having already. And I think that's because of the composition of the flints. So, can you get a Spark Lite to spark using any kind of standard flint? Yeah, you can. And could I eventually get this to go? Yeah, I could. But it generally takes me way more effort than I want. I want like 1, 2, bang, it's done. And while my mileage is obviously going to vary versus someone else's, I want this as a backup cigarette lighter, as weird as that sounds. We'll get into that in a second because of my zip. Well, no, we can get into that now. Every time I lose a Zippo, I'm out like $20. And when I lose a pipe Zippo, it really annoys me because now I'm at like $50. I buy the brass Zippo and then I get a inner for the pipe Zippo. And yeah, it's annoying. So I'm putting back the ferrocerium rod from Spark Lite, the one that's meant to work with the device. The other thing too is that the wheel's gone a bit wiggly on me now. I'm using this way more than the average person will ever need to use a Spark Lite. So if you want to see what extreme usage looks in a Spark Lite, you've got an idea. Boom, there it goes. Kind of annoying, isn't it? But in a worst case scenario, I mean, could you get a spark out of a Spark Lite with just like a Zippo flint? Yeah, you could. And depending, of course, on how I set this up, because I'm still debating on whether or not I'm going to put like petroleum jelly on here. That'll make it harder to light, based on everything that I've seen. Should I put candle wax on there? I'm kind of worried about candle wax. I have a feeling it's going to drip, and that's going to cause a problem for me. I'm actually thinking that the petroleum jelly will do the same thing. So jury's still out on that. I will have to run tests. I'm just going to drop it there. Now the third flint that I got going for you here. This is a flint from China. Now in my over-eager happiness of like, hey look, any flint works in here, I went out and bought 200 flints for $7. That's what 200 flints, give or take 4, looks like. It's a lot of flint. The thought process was, hey, if I'm going to use it that often, I want flint. Now, I've heard that ferrocerium breaks down over time. Okay. And I've obviously been flicking this Spark Lite way more often than I ought to, which is also a thing. But, like I said before, I have a tendency to get a little obsessive over these things because I want to know. Alright. So I've got cotton set up, and before I even start that, I want you to look at something. That's a dryer. Wait, what happened? Do you see it? It seems like the spark on this thing doesn't have the same kind of quality that it does off of the Spark Lite. And when I go, should I hit this thing, which requires a bit of downward pressure on the spark wheel, meaning I'm pushing it in towards the body, this is something that should go up fairly easily, and it's not. Now, for what it's worth, I am left-hand dominant, and I found it easier to actually do this on my left hand versus my right. That having been said, I'm going to take this out, and I haven't touched the cotton at all, right, for what it's worth. And I'm going to put in the, I'm just going to call it the OEM flint. This is so much easier. Just a simple terminology for originally intended parts. Okay. Spin my Allen wrench, which, if I recall correctly, I think my roommate said a T6 will work in there. Because I got a little paranoid about that. It is a tiny little thing. And you know, if you break an Allen wrench, it's like, well. Okay, so here we go. And there it is. Frustrations much? Yes. So, quick deal. Can you put any flint into a Spark Lite? The answer is yes. Will you get the performance out of your Spark Lite with any flint? Absolutely not. And while I wasn't a huge fan of the ferro rod argument, you know, which is better? Do I want more magnesium? Do I want less magnesium? Because less magnesium means less wear and tear. I gotta say, and at least in this regard, the flint you get matters for convenience's sake and for survival's sake. I mean, I'm even hesitant to go there in that regard. If only because, well, what do you define as survival? If I gotta sit there for 20 minutes because all I could find was the flint out of an old Beck that was in a landfill somewhere. I mean, you get what I mean. Everybody creates their own, like, post-apocalyptic hell, if you will, in their head. And says, these are the conditions I gotta work with, so what do I do here? The Spark Lite will work for that. You can absolutely put that in there and, like, good luck, guy. And there I go dropping the Allen wrench. Yeah, you get the point. The flint matters. The flint matters, and for convenience's sake, the flint matters. Now, I spent $7 on 200 of these flints, which honestly wasn't that much. And then I compounded the issue by buying another 400 because, you know, reasons. You can see very clearly here that the Spark Lite is running into issues. And there's very little that the wheel can do about this. It's just the flint itself is having problems. Now, the first one that I hit in this bag of treats, so to speak, the 200 flints, worked out great. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And the other ones, not so much. So I have a feeling that maybe it's a composition difference as we go from like rod to rod, I don't know. And I'm not a metallurgist, so I couldn't tell you what those differences are. But that's the basic idea, is it gets what you pays for in that regard. The Spark Lite can absolutely work with just about any flint you toss at it. Just for the sake of argument, because I know somebody out there is curious. I'm going to grab a fresh flint out of that Chinese bag. Because, yeah, they're in China. There are like 2 factories, I think, in China that can produce flints like that. And they pretty much provide, what do you call it, ferrocerium for just about everybody else. You see what I mean, right? So, mileage may vary. Long and the short of it, right? It seems to me like if you're going to get a spark that you can count on, you don't have to worry about it. The best way to do that is to go with the original flints that these spark lights were designed to be used with. They are just terribly expensive. That shipping cost is ridiculous. And if you had to use another flint, I haven't checked like Ronson or Calibre or anything like that in terms of their flints, but the Zippo flints seem to work fairly well. I would just rather have the original flint. Sometimes it varies, for lack of better words, and it shouldn't, and that bothers me. But it varies. And I'm sure that once I get this thing past a certain point, then it's just going to start varying again. Would I rather have that or this guy here? And, you know, my attitudes are really changing on this. You can see I've dug a divot into that ferro rod. I mean, I've used this quite a bit. Mainly because, again, I want to know. And that is a fairly good spark. That's going to light this on fire fairly easily. Sparklight size is a thing here, and this is what I keep telling myself so I can sleep at night. More on that later. Because I am a huge fan of the Sparklight, but at the same time, like, there is a certain level where practical is something. You gotta start asking yourself if you're married to the dinosaur just because it's what everybody else did, or what you think you're supposed to do. So the first iron rod, how heavy is it? Like I said, I bought several of these things, also from China, by the way. And like I said, I may not have said that, but I'm thinking about getting an hour metal from 5 Coal, just to check that out. And may or may not test some of the other flints that are out there, because that seems like a thing all the coal kids are doing. The Sparklight doesn't weigh very much. It's very simple to carry. It's very tiny, really. Something that sometimes works against it, in my estimation, but here's the thing. I've got a terrible memory. So if I set something down and I don't have a habit of putting it back exactly where it was, it could be a snake, jump out, bite me, and I wouldn't even notice I was bit until it was too late. 200 flints, because reasons. The original OEM flint. Oh, that's what that sound was. And the Zippo flint that I dropped on the floor. Fits into a fire bag that I carry around with me. Aha. There is a lighter that runs off of a USB connection, micro USB connection. I like that thing. It really helps me work with paracord. I've got a full-size Bic, because why not? It's a bag. Flints for days. And my spark light. And that gives me 3 ways to start fire at about the same weight, actually maybe a little less, than the weight of this ferro rod. But the ferro rod will get you there, is the thing, right? It's great to have multiple ways to start fire, but at a certain point, weight becomes a thing. You may have seen in the previous video that I have a Maxpedition EDC bag on me, and I carry that thing everywhere. I mean, everywhere. So right now, I've got the Maxpedition bag on me, right? That fire bag slips into the second pouch up here, and just goes away. I could fit a ferro rod in this bag. It would add a little bit of weight. Alright, but for the most part, fairly comfortable. Normally, my belt is not over the top. It's normally through the pants loop. I just got done teaching a martial arts lesson and decided I'd throw this on instead. It was just easier that way. And oh yeah, I normally have this in the fire bag as well, just because of reasons. Anyway, so quick comparison between flints. Hopefully it was helpful, and I will see you guys in the forums.